We've been talking student debt, healing from financial trauma, all that good stuff. Today, we're talking of the 18-month stint to pay off 60K worth of debt. And as you heard, when I was in undergrad and grad from my previous video, I would pay the interest because I really did not want it to be added to my principal. So when I graduated, first of all, it took me forever to find a job when I was graduating. My big plan was I was going to graduate from undergrad. What I did, graduate from undergrad. And since I was going to the same college for my master's, I was like, oh, by next year, I don't need to do this all over again. So as soon as I finish my last final, I'm going to go to Ghana with a job in hand. It's going to be great. Bro, why were we in May, April, June, and your girl did not have a job? And I was about to go to Ghana, and one of my friends actually ended up putting me in touch with the professor. And through some pestering, I got in touch with the hiring manager for the job that hired me. Now, the thing about the job that hired me, it was a lot of what I wanted. I wanted to move back home to New York City, and I just wanted to be in New York City. I didn't necessarily want to live at home, but I did want to be in New York City. And then I also wanted to give back. My degree's in education, so I wanted to work there. So I ended up working at the Department of Education. Now, the great thing about this is I was like, okay, there's a pathway to a full-time job here. But if you heard that, a pathway to a full-time job, I was hired as a contractor, meaning that I was paid hourly, i.e. if I don't show up to work, I don't get paid. But also it meant that I didn't have access to investing. It also meant that I didn't have any health care, which didn't matter in that moment because I was under 26, but something to think about. Now, me making myself older than I was. But anyway, so obviously, I think like most people, I saw my first job to be my big girl job, graduate college, go get my own place in the city. But I think I was making like 40K, and that's 40K if I showed up to every single hour that I was supposed to. But as I mentioned earlier, as a contractor, if I was not working, I was not being paid, i.e. even if I take vacation, I'm not being paid. So I was like, oof, this is rough. So I made the decision to actually go live with my parents. And if you remember from episode 1, I grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment with 5 other people. Luckily, by now, the apartment was just my parents. So I moved back to the 1-bedroom apartment with now just 3 people in it. So with that, obviously I wasn't paying rent, which was huge. And then I also decided that I was going to get a second job. And when I was applying for college, there was a group that would help you with your essays. It would help you prep and all that good stuff. And I'm really big in giving back. So I wanted to go back and I wanted to help. And then as I was talking to my mentor, he was like, hey, like we are hiring for like an English tutor, etc. Do you want the gig? So that became my second income. So within 18 months, pretty much, I would say 90% of my paychecks went directly to paying off my student debt. And at some point, I think I also consolidated it. So I moved it from wherever it was to a company that was going to be slightly cheaper in terms of interest rates. I think now nuts is in my mind. I don't remember why, but this also made it easier because now I saw all my loans, because remember I took out 10 loans, one per semester. I was in college. So I could see all my loans in one place, which was really, 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 really helpful. And then I don't remember the exact strategy I used, but it was definitely a combination of Snowball and Agile. Pretty much I wanted to pay off the highest thing. So the highest thing could have been maybe a $5,000 loan at a 25% interest rate versus the $10,000 loan at the 1% interest rate. So and if you're doing math and that sounds crazy, like please leave me alone. Just get the idea of what I said. Like even though sometimes maybe the loan amount might have been higher, the interest rate, the loan that was less money cost more. So I would prioritize that. And then once I paid off that, so let's say I was putting everything I could. Let's say that was, I don't know, $600 to that loan while still paying the minimum and the interest for the others. Once I finished paying off that $600 every month, because that loan was done, I would take that same $600 and put it on to the next thing, the next most expensive loan. And I kept doing that until I paid off my loan in 18 months. So that's how I did it. It was a lot, but paying off paying off the loans. I think some people say paying off the small loans is like psychological wins, but honestly, every time, because when you have a loan, you can see how much interest is accruing every day. And I used to just look at that number and I'll just be like, oh my gosh. So every time I paid and I saw that number go down, that was win enough for me. I'm not going to hold you. That was win enough for me. This is crazy to be like, oh my gosh. Every day I am giving somebody in the world like $20, depending on the size of the loan. I'm just giving you $20 every day. So to me, it was rewarding if that $20 went down to 19, if it went down to 17, if it went, like, I was like, yeah, every day I want to give you less and less money. That's pretty much how I saw it. So like very much the start of my billionaire. And I used Excel. I use Excel to do this. Every time I paid, I would, check it off. I used a simple Excel. There's so many apps these days that you can probably use, but the Excel was just helpful for me to understand. And I didn't really go out. I'm not going to hold you. I didn't really go out with my friends. Like if they were doing anything at home, I would do that. But I wasn't the girl who was out clubbing. I wasn't going on the trips. I wasn't doing whatever. But I'm glad I did it because ultimately I was able to pay off this debt. I paid it off, oh my gosh, maybe 5-6 years ago now. So like it's something that could have still been with me today. And funny enough, I won't even get into the story, but I ended up pivoting from my government job to a tech job later. And one of the things people kept saying was like, oh, you don't need to worry about your loans if you stay at the government. And what I realized was that if I stayed at that government job, yes, in 10 years, my loans might have possibly been forgiven, but my salary would have only gone up incrementally, meaning that the quality of life that I wanted, I was denying myself so I can keep this low salary to have my loans potentially paid off. So I chose be ridiculously aggressive, pay off your loans, but also get more money. And so far it's worked for me. So that was nice. It was a journey and it was a struggle to get it done, but I'm really, really happy that I did. I don't know if I'm trying to remember what other questions people asked during this time. That was the crux of it. So tomorrow we are going to talk about going to my tech job. Actually, no, I'll just talk about it today. Going to the tech job, and as I mentioned, being in the government job was super secure. I had whatever the equivalent for pension was going to be. I had passed on my tests. I was going to be fine. I was going to have the union and everything. And I decided to leave. And when I left and went to tech, everyone was like, oh my God, tech is so unstable. And fortunately, I had 3 years where I learned so much in tech, but I was laid off. But because of my savings habits throughout college and whatnot, because of me not having any student loan debt, because I was just really adamant about always tracking my money. When I was laid off, I had enough savings. I was already planning on taking a year off, so I had enough savings. I took a year off from work, did not worry about it. And when I came back into the workforce, I was like, okay, I'm back. But in that time frame, I was not struggling or worried. And I credit that to the 14-year-old me when we started off first job and we started saving. I think habits start early, but if you can't start them early, then you need to figure out what is the thing that you want the most and money can afford. I think that will really help motivate you to move forward. And then once I got the house, I decided, like, let's just lock in a place to live for some time. So then like I got the house. At this point in my life, I have gone from paycheck to paycheck, wondering where my next meal will come from, worried about credit cards, to hacking credit cards, paying off $60K worth of debt in 18 months, having one of the highest, whatever the highest credit score is. Took a year sabbatical. Obviously I'm not debt free now because of the mortgage, but checking all the boxes for financial success was really important to me. It's like, okay, you haven't missed a meal, you have a place to live. That's really, really important. And it just highlights that freedom is a real goal here. So it's not about being super policing people around money or budgeting, but it's really around like, hey, what type of life do you want and how do you achieve that? And usually it has to do with some form of money. So how do we get you on board with that? So anyway, if you listen to the story, thank you. If you're navigating your own money stuff and you have questions, like, please let me know. I'm happy to answer questions and share how I learned to invest, to save, to negotiate, all the stuff that comes with making more money. All right, see y'all later.